Smile, be, chat, join for networking.
That's a lovely introduction. Good morning, everyone. My name's Janine Mitchell. My company's called Change for Success. I'm going to talk to you today about how one word completely changed the direction of my life. So, on the 20th of April 2008, I met this great guy. I fell for him hook, line and sinker. He was good looking, he was charismatic, he was funny. My friends and family absolutely loved him as well. And it was a real kind of whirlwind romance. So we'll call this guy James for the purpose of this talk. So James came at a really good time. I was in a really stressful job. I'd gone through a string of bad relationships and my dad had recently been diagnosed with cancer. So everything was going really well. We moved in together and he even got me a dog called Kelly. And we did have the odd argument. I mean, we all have arguments in relationships, don't we? So that kind of seemed normal. A lot was going on in my life at the time with what I was experiencing with my dad and everything like that. So we moved in together by this point and we were at home. Now, James was a chef, so he traditionally did most of the cooking, which was quite nice. However, on the flip side of that, he would use every single pot and pan in the place. So I was the chief washer-upper. We didn't have a dishwasher at the time, that was me. So I'd usually be stood at the kitchen sink cleaning all these pots and pans. So I just said to him this one time, I said, look, can you not use so many pans? Can you just use one instead of 5 million? So next thing, an argument kind of started. He started shouting and started swearing over nothing. And I said, I'm sorry, let's just kind of, what's this all about kind of thing. But things kind of escalated further. I asked him to stop, which he didn't do. And then I just tried to leave the house. I thought, I don't need this at the moment. And he wouldn't let me leave. And then things escalated further still. He continued shouting, he was swearing, and he started throwing things. So I was really anxious, really scared. Finally, I did manage to leave the house. I took my keys, I ran down the road, got into my car. He came after me, and I was scrambling to get into the car, got into the car, trying to start the engine, and he was literally hammering on the window. I was surprised it didn't smash. Luckily it didn't, and I managed to drive off down the road at speed. So I went to the nearest shop and I bought a packet of cigarettes. I don't smoke anymore, but I sat in the car and smoked a cigarette. And I just sat there for ages. I was really emotional, really upset, and I was just trying to work out exactly what had just happened. It took me ages to calm down, and finally James calmed down as well. And I did finally go back home. And once I got in, he started to apologise. And then my phone actually went, my mobile phone rang, and it was my mum. Now, my mum was phoning regularly at this time. But the moment my phone went, I just knew that something was wrong. So my mum said the nurses had been on, and my dad had been in hospital by this point around 6 months. She said, they're saying we need to get to the hospital. So James said, look, let's just forget what's happened. We need to pick your mum up now. We need to go straight to the hospital. Which is what we did. So we drove there, we picked my mum up. We went to see my dad, and sadly later on that day, my dad passed away. So I got on with my life. As I said before, James was very apologetic, and I just presumed this would be an isolated incident. And as I said, there was a lot of things going on as well. So we just put it down to the stresses he was experiencing and that I was experiencing. However, it wasn't a one-off. These incidents became more regular. Now, this relationship, it was a very psychological, and there was a lot of psychological and emotional abuse going on within this relationship. And the real abuse occurred where he was really wearing me down. But I think at the time he was very much preying on my vulnerability, given what was going on at the time in my situation as well. And I was still holding down the stressful job. But the ironic thing was, I was working at that time as a probation officer. And I worked with high-risk offenders. So my typical kind of caseload consisted of drug dealers, murderers, lifers, sex offenders, and ironically, domestic violence offenders. So my caseload was mainly men. So I'd have men come in to see me week in, week out, week in, week out. And I'd talk to them about the different types of domestic abuse. And I'd talk to them about how abuse affects victims. But I, ironically, didn't see that I was in one of those relationships. And I also remember a Foresight, Taz Thornton, many of you'll know, she did a Foresight some time back, and she was in an abusive relationship. And she said something that really resonated with me. She said, it would have been easier if he'd have just punched me in the face. That would have given me the excuse to go. And I really resonated with that. Not that I'm saying, I'm justifying being punched in the face, but if that would have happened, it would have given me the chance and the opportunity to say, you know what, he's been violent to me now, I can leave. But when someone is saying kind of blaming everything outside of the situation, including you. You just believe that it's nothing to do with them, if that kind of makes sense. So that really resonated with me. So every time something would happen, James would be extremely apologetic. I'm so sorry, that really out of character, it will not happen again. And things will change. Now, James was running his own business at the time, so we all know how stressful that can be at times. And he would say, you know, once the business does well, things will change. Once we have children, things will change. When we get married, things will change. When I stand on my head, things will change. He just kept promising that things would change. So that was the one that I used to hear: when we get married, when we make that firm commitment to each other, things will definitely change. So I just hoped and prayed that they would. I love this guy. So things moved forward, we got engaged, and then the day came of our wedding. Now, the day itself was absolutely amazing because I organised it. It was fantastic. But again, when we first got together, I imagined us with this future together, and that had happened on that day. I imagined us when we first met having this big white wedding, and that's exactly what happened. We had a beautiful big white wedding in front of all our friends and family. I wore a big white dress. We went to a beautiful venue afterwards. And James was fantastic. He was the life and soul of the party. Everyone loved him. He was saying how amazing I was. His speech was fantastic. And the whole day was just wonderful. And I thought, wow, this is great. Things have actually changed. He kept promising when we got married, things would change. And as I said before, all our friends, family were there, including some of my work colleagues, including a friend of mine called Mark, who was at the wedding as well. So we went off on a honeymoon. We went to Italy, and we went to Italy for a week. And again, we were having a fantastic time. Italy, beautiful place. We explored the Amalfi Coast. And once again, having a fantastic time. And I thought, wow, things have definitely changed. So 3 days into the honeymoon, we were sat on a beach having a fantastic time, just enjoying the lovely weather. Excuse me. And then James just suddenly kicked off out of nowhere, and he started accusing me of having an affair with a friend called Mark, which wasn't the case, but this was something that he used to kind of accuse me of regularly. So he was shouting, swearing, calling me all the names under the sun. And again, my stomach was in my mouth, and I just thought, you know what, things haven't changed. Things have just gone back to exactly where they were. So we went home, and things continued as they were, so things had never really changed. So I tried to leave that relationship on several occasions. Every time I tried to go, James wouldn't let me. He'd come up with all kinds of reasons why things would change again and would be extremely apologetic. And incidentally, the time for someone to leave an abusive relationship is the time when they're most likely to be abused. Why? Because that person is losing control over you. There's a lot of power and control that goes on within these relationships. So after several attempts, I did finally manage to leave. I took my dog Kelly with me to my mum's, 40 minutes down the road in Southport, about an hour away from here. And had I really left? Yeah, there was some sense of relief. But had I left? No. Had I escaped? No, not really. He was texting, he was phoning, he was turning up at my mum's. I just couldn't really get rid of him. Bless him. So at the time, I was still holding down this job. How I don't know. And I was in work, and a friend of mine, I'd not told too many people, by the way. I told a couple of close people what was going on, because there was a lot of shame and guilt going on within what was going on for me at the time. I told a couple of close friends as to what was happening, and someone said to me, why don't you go and see this therapist? I know of a really good therapist that I can recommend. But all these thoughts were going through my head. It's only nut jobs that see therapists. It's cranks that see therapists. It's people with mental health problems that see therapists. Why do I, a strong, independent female, need to go and see some bloke to talk to me about my problems? I can deal with my own stuff. But nevertheless, she told me how amazing he was, and I booked in to see him the following week after work. So all that week in work, James was being super nice. He was saying he'd turned a corner, could we meet up? He'd changed, the usual kind of stuff. So it came to the whole week passed by, and it came to the day that I was due to see the therapist. I was due to see him after work that day. And James phoned me first thing in the morning. He said, look, can we meet up later? And again, all these thoughts were going through my head about seeing this therapist. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to cancel the session and go and meet James instead, see what he's got to say. But I didn't have time. I had to get on with work. Now that day, it was a typical day in the probation office. I had to send someone back to prison. I had an abusive alcoholic kicking off with me in a supervision session. I had someone's family having a go at me down the phone. And then right at the end of my working day, I had an hour's session with a paedophile. Now, I had a lot of sex offenders on my caseload at the time, and these sessions were never easy. This was a session I never looked forward to. Now, generally, a lot of my sex offenders were in a lot of denial, like this guy was. I couldn't go in and talk to him about the weather. I mean, I could have done, but my job was all about managing risk and protecting the public. So for me, I had to go and speak to this guy about his darkest, deepest sexual thoughts and feelings and challenge him on that because, as I say, there was a lot of denial going on. So I had the session with him. I came out right at the end of the day. I was exhausted, and I was about to back up to my desk, and I was about to pick up the phone to cancel this therapist. And then my mobile went and it was James. Right, I'm outside your mum's, I'm going to get the fucking dog. I was just in panic. I put the phone down, ran into the toilet, crying my eyes out. He was effectively threatening me to suggest that he was outside my mum's house and he was going to go in and get my dog. Now that would have just completely, I don't know what I would have done if that would have happened. My friend came in the toilet, I was very emotional, and she said, look, Janine, you need to phone the police. James contacted me a bit later. It was all kind of idle threats like usual. But I remember leaving work that day. I remember looking at the building, and as I left, I just thought, you know what, I can't face this job for one more second. I can't face my life. I can't face anything that's going on at this moment in time. So I got to see the therapist. I was with him for about 2 hours. I cried through most of the session, I think, but I felt better at the end. And then right at the end, as I was about to leave, Eamon is this guy's name, and I was about to go, and Eamon said to me, he said, can I just say, you've said one word today about 20 times. So I said, okay, what point are you trying to make? He said, you keep saying the word try. So I said, well, what do you mean? He said, okay, I'll give you an example. If I said to you, I'll meet you for a coffee tomorrow night at 6 o'clock, or I'll try and meet you for a coffee, what does that mean? It means that, you know, I won't turn up, I'll be late, I'll have a better invitation, that kind of thing. So I'll tell you what he told me. I was running around my life saying, I'll try and do this, I'll try and do that, I'll try and do the other. So I was effectively giving myself an excuse not to do something. So that's the first thing. So we've got to be careful about what we say to ourselves and notice what we say. The second thing is that was linked to an old subconscious program that I had that was going on. My confidence was on the floor at the time, so it's linked to that lack of confidence. So it's twofold. So he explained this to me, and a proper light bulb went off in my head. You know, you have those kind of light bulb moments? And he said, okay, what's your plans now? I said, well, I'm going to chill out over the weekend. Then on Monday, I'm going to try. And I could feel the word try about to fall out of my mouth. And he just looked at me. And he just kind of looked at me like that. And I said, okay. It was my plan to go to the doctors, and I just needed to take some time out to do something, to get away or whatever. So I said, okay, on Monday morning, I'm going to go to the doctors, blah, blah, blah. But I firmly believe if we hadn't had that conversation there and then, I wouldn't have gone to the doctors. I probably would have gone back to work. I probably would have gone back to James. But I believe with that firm intention that I made there and then, and with Eamon obviously on my back, I made that firm intention to go to the doctors on the Monday morning, which is what I did. Spoke to my GP, he gave me a bit of time off. Exactly a week after that, I was stepping off a plane, about to embark on a 3-week trip on my own around Vietnam. And then exactly a day later, I was stood on the veranda of my beach bungalow, literally on the beach. And I could hear the sea against the shore, I could feel the sun on my face. And for the first time in years, I felt completely free. I felt like I completely walked right back into my life there and then. And what was to follow was a 3-week adventure around the whole of Vietnam. I had the most amazing time. I met the most amazing people. And I just had this complete feeling that I completely walked right back into my life. And the point I want to make there is, no matter how low you go, you can always bounce back. Trust me, you can. So I came back home. I didn't really want to, but I came home. I did go back to work. I carried on seeing Eamon. And I would say from that point onwards, my view of a therapist completely changed. Eamon taught me all these skills, techniques, tools that completely changed my life. And it was from that point I wanted to retrain myself. The old job wasn't doing it for me anymore. I was doing that long enough. And so I retrained because I wanted to teach this stuff to other people, which is what I'm fortunate enough to do now. And I'm proud to say that Eamon is my teacher, my mentor, my friend. He's amazing. He's in his 70s now. And again, I just want to finish with a couple of points. So I went back to the word before that changed my life. And I want you to just have a moment to think. I know we've got a busy day planned today, but maybe a moment later on, just have a think to yourself. What is that one word, or what are those words that you say within your vocabulary? It could be try, it could be something else. What is that word that you say to yourself that holds you back? What are those same words that you keep saying that links back to an old subconscious program that's keeping you stuck? Just have a real think about that either now or later on for me. And like I did that time, I want you to have a real firm intention just to make some changes with that. Not to try to change it, obviously, but to change it. Okay, so that's me, Janine Mitchell. Thank you very much.
Smile, be chat, join for networking.